right, welcome to a brand new edition of Between the Links on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. My name is Mike Heck. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a weekend full of MMA action, but yesterday, just some awful news shook the sports world with the passing of Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, Gianna, and the 7 other people who lost their lives in that tragic helicopter crash. It was a pretty rough day, a day full of reflection, I think, for a lot of us here that are watching and listening right now. And I know some people are still feeling the effects of it, that this horrible thing, which is totally understandable. But hopefully this show with this incredible panel can get your mind off of it and maybe put a smile on your face and can just make you a little bit happier here. That's what we're trying to do. And I know it's tough to transition from saying that, but let us go ahead and start the show by introducing the incredible panel that I just mentioned. First, Mr. Keith Schillen, who I got to see face-to-face on Friday night at CES 60. It was a fun card, and despite you being a huge pain in the ass on this show, Keith, it's always great to hang out with you, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. It sucks to have to follow up a sad news, but I'm excited. I'm always excited to do the show, see you, see all the other great reporters there, Nolan King, Travis Lazat, Jared Kelly. I'll probably forget 1 or 2 people, but yeah, it's always fun. And I'm really excited about this week because the special guest we have, I'm not going to spoil it, but the last time I believe this man was on the show, we had probably the longest finals debate in history. I think we had going back about 12 times each. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, we'll get to him in just a moment. We have Mr. Craig Allen. Apparently he's going to be bringing some fire, as he stated earlier in our group chat and on social media. Plus he's celebrating a new gig in the MMA space, aren't you, Craig?
I am, Mike. I just joined MMA on Point. I did not want to let the cat out of the bag, but finally the video came out. And listen, all weekend I've been practicing on one thing, one move. I saw this on Twitter. It goes something like this. Stephen A is the best boxer I've ever seen in my entire life. He can't take that from me, and I'm looking forward to more Stephen A. Smith boxing tutorials in the near future. 2020, it's the year of Stephen A.
Well, I don't know how we're going to top that, but maybe the news that Davidson Baker is not here can top that. But, you know, stepping in once more to defend Davidson's title in his absence is Mr. John Franklin. How are you, sir?
I'm good. The Heck Baker feud continues. So I would just like to say that me and Craig are so matched. Actually, you know what? Let me just say one thing about Kobe, and then I'll get to the other thing. But real quick, listen, if anybody, him, Jordan, there's a couple guys that you could say basketball players that were like fighters, right? They went in there and they went after it. So I do think there's some crossover between Kobe and talking about the UFC. The other thing is, you know, before he passed, 2 things that seemed important to him were working hard, as always, and being a good father. And that's kind of why I pride myself in Loudmouth. We got a lot of guys that work hard and are all great fathers, and so that's part of that as well. But the fact that Craig and I are so locked up on early stoppage, Craig told me privately that he was coming for me this week. So he's got props. I got him too. I got the headgear, Craig. You want to get after it? Let's get after it. I'm ready. Let's do it. You got the gloves. I got the headgear.
I'm ready.
Do the whole show with the headgear on. Do the whole show.
Oh. If we weren't on video, I would, but I bring the eyes.
I'm going to Art Jimerson this son of a gun.
We're already off to a great start here, and to put the cherry on top of this Sunday, backed by popular demand. You know him from his incredible breakdowns and tips for MMA Junkie and the Protect Your Neck podcast, the man, the myth, the legend. Mr. Dan Tom is back. How are you, sir?
It's great to be here. Thank you, guys. Thanks for the shout-out to the podcast, which, by the way, Keith gave me a shout as far as longest finals. Well, probably not a surprise to your audience, but when Keith came on my show, it actually is a record for the most long-winded show when you put me and him on a show without, like, you guys to break us up. So I'm glad to be back in what is, especially for you visual. I usually listen on the podcast of this program, by the way, but for you visual watchers, it's almost like a Brady Bunch format here. Like such as myself and you guys. It's like a messed up adopted family. I love it.
We are messed up, no doubt about that. So let's get into this thing. I'm excited. Everyone's on fire thus far. And as you know, the rebuttal rule is in effect, and I can't wait for the rebuttals tonight. So let's get into this thing. Last week, we talked about, on most of the shows in this network, Bellator and the UFC going head-to-head on Saturday night. The UFC was in Raleigh, North Carolina. Bellator 238 took place in Inglewood, California, and both cards heading in had a lot of great storylines. And we're going to get into that in a moment because, in my opinion, the biggest story in MMA over the weekend was Stephen A. Smith. How about that? He teased a response on Saturday to Joe Rogan's quote-unquote bullshit, and later on that night, Stephen A. Smith responded to Joe Rogan saying that Smith should be covering the UFC and MMA, essentially saying that it's a bad idea. And Stephen A. came out, responded, and I'm sure you've all seen the clip by now. So, John Franklin, you won the blind draw tonight. Let's start with you. What did you make of Stephen A. Smith's response on Saturday? What was your big takeaway of this whole thing?
Listen, I get why he did it. He can't look like he doesn't know what he's talking about when his livelihood, his opinions, and takes. Also, he throws Joe a little shade, gets on Joe's podcast, and raises his profile even more. And I agree with him. So I felt that he was getting undue criticism, so he should defend it. Now let's get to Joe Rogan for a second. So you mean to tell me, Joe, that Stephen A. Smith is out of his depth talking UFC, but not every comedian friend you have? Not Louis J. Gomez, who has a podcast with Michael Bisping. Not Jim Norton, who has a podcast with Matt Serra. Not Brian Callen and Brendan Schaub, who talk fights all the time. Schaub, who is half a comedian and half an analyst. I say that because he sucks at both. And don't get me started on Ari Shaffir, whose comments about Kobe Bryant dying were some of the most vile things you could ever say. Joe, you've done a lot for the sport. I respect you for that. But if you're going to be the de facto ombudsman for the sport, you might want to start, before you start looking at other people's yards, start trimming your own hedges, homeboy. Also, lastly, on Stephen A.'s comments, can I just ask, who's fair game? So we can't roast Cowboy, right? Because he just has all these accolades and he's perceived greatness. But BJ Penn and Luke Rockhold, they're fine. They're washed. We can talk about them constantly. Please, Joe, get some, look around your surroundings, get some situational awareness, and let Stephen A. be.
Hot start. Dan Tom, what did you think of Stephen A. Smith's response?
You know, starting where John left off about Joe, I'm definitely not shy when it comes to criticizing Joe or being vocal that maybe, he doesn't do the same prep and performances as we're known. That being said, Joe Rogan absolutely deserves to be there. He absolutely deserved to be there at the end. And I don't think Stephen A. Smith did, nor do I think it mattered. I know Stephen A. Smith tried to, quote, record-breaking numbers, but I would argue that's more toward a McGregor / the big event. We all forecasted ahead of time that it was going to do big numbers. I don't really think Stephen A. Smith was shocking the world with that. And from the martial arts perspective, again, even though I will be one of the first to criticize Joe, especially as of late in the recent years, but with this, I agree 100%. Granted, I also come from the martial arts aspect of it before I competed just like Joe, Taekwondo, so forth, before getting into the sport. So I share that opinion, and I agree. I don't think we need any of that nonsense. It might work great for other sports. It might work great for like the political genre and the talking heads and like saying blasphemous crap, but we don't need that. We had guys like Covington already bringing more politics than we already like in this sport. We don't need any more from a non-fighter like Stephen A. Smith.
Keith, I'm sure you know how I feel about this by now. A lot of people probably saw what I put on Twitter, but what did you make of the Stephen A. Smith response and really this whole situation?
Yeah, I'm glad you said the whole situation. I'm going to talk about the whole situation, and I'm actually going to be the Judas and back up Stephen A. Smith. Listen, what did he say that was so controversial? He said that Donald Cerrone has a questionable jaw. He lost his last 3 fights by knockout. Is he lying? He says maybe the bright lights was too big for him. Everybody who broke down the fight before that was saying the same thing. He said that he didn't learn anything about Conor in 40 seconds, but he did clarify, because I disagree with that, and I actually agree with what Joe Rogan said. But he clarified and said, well, I'm talking specifically, like, can he beat Khabib? Can he beat Masvidal? Did we learn anything? Can you learn a lot in 40 seconds? I don't like that he said Cerrone gave up, because nobody knows that other than Cerrone. But when he said that Cerrone's performance was atrocious, was it not? He got knocked out in 40 seconds. He didn't land a single strike. He got hurt by shoulder strikes. You know who else pretty much said the same thing? Chael Sonnen said the same thing. You know who else? Michael Bisping said the same thing. But nobody's going after them because he's not a world-class fighter, he can't have
10 seconds.
Opinions? Listen, the MMA has been calling to be mainstream forever. And then when things happen, we get mad. Like, it's like when the tap-out shirts started, like, blowing up and people who didn't watch MMA started wearing tap-out shirts, suddenly tap-out wasn't cool and they were sellouts. When the tough crowd came in, suddenly, we don't want those kind of people. Like, give it up. I got more, so I'm going to rebuttal. So I just go to them and I'm coming back.
All right, well, we can't wait to hear more from you, Keith. Craig Allen, what do you got?
Lovely, Mike. All right, so the whole plan with ESPN, let's have a basketball reporter, a sort of jack of all trades, go on the UFC broadcast after possibly the biggest fight of the year so far, and offers taking the situation. That's kind of like having John Franklin on Between the Links, and then you team up with a Bellator question. You already know what you're going to get, so you better stay in your lane. Listen, Stephen A. doubled down in the perfect way. He offered up an apology, and then he used the classic salesman approach and doubled down. And I mean, Josh Gross tweeted his kind of somewhat of support out there and pointed out the fact that Stephen A. covered UFC 41. That's like me saying, hey, I listened to the Toe to Toe podcast in 2015. Doesn't mean I know anything now. Not one bit, but it's cool to look back on. That's throwing shade at John Franklin. He hosted that podcast in 2015 and doesn't even remember it. Check the numbers is something that Stephen A. said. I mean, I haven't seen a flop this big since Kwame Brown was traded from the Lakers to the Grizzlies. Listen, Connor brought the numbers here. Stephen A. obviously did not. And it's just been a wave of negativity post-fight. Stephen A.'s in the wrong here.
It's all right. We didn't even need the 10 seconds. All right, we got multiple rebuttals here. Keith said he was going to rebuttal, so go ahead.
Well, I'm going to go right up to Craig because he made it sound like, oh, he's just a basketball guy. Well, Stephen A. Smith covers a whole bunch of sports. Like, there's this weird concept. Like, you can like multiple sports. It's what ESPN does. Chris Berryman will cover football, but then he'll call the home run derby. You'll have, I don't know a lot of the names. Stuart Scott did multiple sports. Errol Hawani's doing multiple sports. Like, saying, oh, because he likes basketball, he can't cover MMA. Pick out what he said that was wrong. The truth is people flipping out with Stephen A. Smith. He's saying the same damn thing that Chael Sonnen and Michael Bisping said. Like, the problem is people don't like the guy. And they love Donald Cerrone. Like, you can't say anything negative about Donald Cerrone. And then people say, oh, you need to show him respect. He actually did. He talked about his stuff. He said this guy's got 17 stoppages in the UFC. He said all these things. But how was it not an atrocious performance? He didn't land a single strike. Years earlier, he trash-talked Conor McGregor. Said, oh, you had no business coming up to this division. Oh, man, you're too small. You know, I'll hurt you and all that stuff. And then he doesn't even land a single strike. Listen, if it wasn't Stephen A. Smith, or hold on, it was like kind of this perfect storm. The guy that everyone likes getting bashed by the guy that nobody likes. But if we went back a month earlier and Kamaru Usman starts Colby Covington in 40 seconds, and Stephen A. Smith said Colby Covington's performance was atrocious, would anybody be saying it? They'd probably be tweeting all over it, being like, that's right, break his jaw, this and that. Listen, why is it in MMA you can't say something atrocious? This Sunday is the Super Bowl. If the Kansas City Chiefs blow out the 49ers 50-10, Stephen A. Smith's going to say the 49ers performance was atrocious. And nobody's going to make a big deal. No one's going to say, oh, you got to be nice to Jimmy Garoppolo, or you got to be nice to Nick Bosa, or whatever, Steve Young's not going to come out and say, he never played football, so he can't have an opinion like that. Like, listen, we want to be mainstream. This is what happens when you go mainstream.
Greg?
All right, Mike, here we go. Keith rambled for a bit, and now it's my turn to clean up the pieces. And I've got a 5-shot here so we can see everybody. And now the people that are following along on YouTube can see that Keith typically does turn the color of whatever shirt he's wearing. So now he's a lovely bright pink. We'll see what happens later on in the episode. As far as Stephen A. Smith's concerned, and you look at his performance post-UFC 246, it's weird, man. It's just weird. Like, realistically, stay in your lane. I know he comments on football. He can comment on hockey. He has the right to. He's one of ESPN's biggest personalities. But to go on a show like that and just regurgitate facts and different things that you've already heard from everybody else, you're offering up nothing that's totally original, and you're just trying to be controversial. And again, I know that that's his personality, but to a hardcore MMA audience, it doesn't come off as brash or as funny. It just comes off as playing dumb.
All right, hold on. Listen, Keith, hang back. I don't know why. There's still 2 more rebuttals to get to. John, you're up.
So I can appreciate that my early stoppage co-host wants to go to war with me. The last time a Canadian went to war with an American, oh, that's right. Canada's never gone to war with America because no Canadian would be dumb enough to go to war with an American except for this one. And it's ironic that this is the first week that he's on MMA On Point because he could not be less on point than he is right now. So they might rescind that. Dude, here's the deal. You like history. You talked about some podcast I did back in the day. Let's talk about history. UFC 41. What happened that night? Well, Josh Gross and Stephen A. Smith were the only 2 people covering UFC. So if you want to talk about how long Stephen A. Smith's been involved in UFC, it's a hell of a lot longer than Ariel Helwani. It's a hell of a lot longer than most members of the media. It's a hell of a lot longer than all of us. So he was there. He's been covering the UFC longer than he's been covering football, if you want to get real particular about it. So for me, I'm saying the guy was there at the beginning. So maybe Joe should have not been high that night, looked around and saw him in the locker room. There wasn't many there. It was Josh Gross, Stephen A. Smith. That was it. So, yeah, he's got the credentials as far as I'm concerned.
All right, Dan, what would you like to say?
I'm sorry, John, but there's been like 2 million shows since then. So even if like he wasn't on drugs, I don't know if you would remember one guy going for one time. I don't know if we can blanket that either. However, I do agree with you, John, in the sense that, you know, as far as I like those comedian comparisons as far as other people that do the sport and no one's talking about. However, those guys weren't at the post show of the biggest fight for one. And for two, whether it's Gomez or Jim Norton, who I can definitely attest for. I don't listen to the Gomez or Bisping podcast much, but those guys do way more prep and know way more about MMA than Stephen A. Smith does. And they don't even have, again, back to point A, as high of a responsibility. And you know, again, Keith, it's tough. You're probably the only one that can shut me down on this point because I think you're the only one else here that's fought, and you actually won yours, so you really can talk, unlike me. However, man, I don't think you can compare, you know, to steal Rogan's phrase, stick and ball sports, because not to steal his phrase, it's relevant because it's what we're arguing here. You can't compare stick and ball sports to what they're giving health-wise. And more importantly, yes, that's a great point, Keith, as far as we want to be mainstream, and us MMA fans, me included, will always complain when we get what the hell we want. And there is a problem there. However, it does not outweigh the fact that Stephen A. Smith was wrong more than he was right. That whatever you want to call him, I didn't even get an apology, first of all, but you can't tell me he will apologize enough as much as he doubled down in the wrong. And it's not how you say things, it's how they're heard. He's not heard well because he doesn't come off well because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He shouldn't have been there. He never made a difference. We shouldn't compare these to sports because if we all care about MMA, and everyone on this panel does, you guys all know that even though, to Keith's point, we do want it to be mainstream, we also know it's a delicate fucking process. It's not the same. Whether it's the athletes getting to fight night, us consuming the sport, all medians, MMA is different. That's why we love it. Why are we treating it, you know, pretending it's not different here? It is different, and it deserves more respect than what Stephen A. Smith gave the sport and gave Cowboy. He wasn't necessarily wrong, but did he promote it positively, the sport of Cowboy? No, he did not.
All right, Keith, I know you're just waiting. You're like a little volcano right now, a little pink volcano. Go ahead and erupt.
Well, let's start with the history lesson that John and Craig both got wrong. So John said that Canada never got in a war with America, which is not true, the War of 1812, which Craig mentioned. But what Craig doesn't mention, and he said Canada won. What Craig doesn't mention is that it was actually America versus Great Britain, and Canada was like a little sidekick helping them along. It's like, it'd be like after the fight with Conor McGregor, if one of Habib's guys like, yeah, man, we beat your ass. Like, no, Habib beat Conor McGregor's ass, and then you kind of like ran up and punched him once. Like, stop. Okay.
Keith, we're still a constitutional monarchy. You know, like that's still a thing. I don't want to get into the history of it, but you're trying to be right on a technicality, and it's as ridiculous as your Pepto-Bismol facing shirt.
Okay, this is the shirt you gave me, by the way. Second of all, I got a big issue with the people that are saying, well, he doesn't know anything about the sport. He doesn't train in the sport. He doesn't do that. Like, and a lot of people and Josh Thompson was actually one saying on Joe Rogan, like, well, he's never trained in LA. Well, how much training does Ariel Helwani have? How much training does Josh Gross have? How about Megan O'Leary and Karen Bryant? Where's the videos of Karen Bryant punching pads and saying, well, if you punch pads bad, you can't really have an opinion. It's a slippery slope. Bill Belichick never played in the NFL. Does anybody question Bill Belichick's knowledge of NFL? Of course not. But I'm just saying, it's a slippery slope. And then, like, how good of an MMA fighter do you have to be to have an opinion? Like, can Josh Thompson comment on a John Jones fight? If John Jones gets knocked out by Dominic Reyes, can Josh Thompson say, oh, you know, John Jones had a bad performance? Well, you're not John Jones. He's the greatest fighter of all time. You know what I'm saying? It's like a slippery slope. Like, can you only comment on guys that you're better than? Like, Michael Bisping can make a comment about, you know, I don't know. I can't think of someone that Michael Bisping's better than. But
we get the metaphor.
You get it. Like, can Michael Bisping say he's better than a guy, but then Chael Sonnen has to shut up because he never was a UFC champion? Like, can Michael Bisping comment about Donald Cerrone, but Chael Sonnen can't because, Chael Sonnen, he's 0-5 or whatever he is, and his title chances are 0-3 or whatever. So, it's such a slippery slope, and it's just silly like that we do this. That, no one says that Chris Berman has to throw a spiral to make a comment about football. Why do we do that with the MMA?
All right, here's my take on it if you missed it. One, Stephen A. Smith is one of the biggest names ESPN has, and he was there for a reason. I'm not saying he brought the numbers, but when Stephen A. Smith is involved with something that ESPN is doing, it's a big deal. It's just that's the way that it is, and MMA fans may not understand that. And in terms of the response and everything that happened, Stephen A. Smith did this on purpose. He knew that people like us would react to it. He knew MMA Twitter would react to it. He saw what everybody had to say about him on social media following UFC 246. And there's a reason why he put out the tweet at like noontime saying, I'm going to respond to this bullshit in a couple of hours. And then he waited till like 7:30 Eastern Standard Time in the middle of 2 fight cards to post the response. And then 2.8 million people plus watched it in its entirety multiple times. So he did this all on purpose. He knew the reaction. And there's a reason why he's been a reporter of his caliber for 25 years. There's a reason why he's on the First Take desk and everyone wants to slap him around. There's a reason why we want Max Kellerman doing it instead of him. But ESPN's not going to put Max Kellerman in that spot. They're going to keep Stephen A. Smith there. Why? Because we're reacting the way we're reacting. And with that being said, I love that round so much. And this is going to be a coward's way to do this, but I'm giving everybody 10 points. Everybody gets 10 points because I love that so much. I think that was the longest segment in the history of Between the Links outside of the finals between Keith Schillen and Dan Tom all those weeks ago. But let us move on to
Mike,
the
real quick.
card.
Mike, before we move on quickly, can Roy Nelson comment on Frank? Is there a chart? Is there a chart that I could find where
that's my point. Like,
that's his point. Okay, we finally got his point. All right.
Keith's basement's like an FBI, investigation where it's like this
Got the
person
court
looks at this
board,
guy. It's
Frank
like
Mir,
court boards all
Roy
over the
Nelson.
place,
But
figuring all this out.
that's basically what guys are saying. Like, if you're not that good at MMA, you can't talk MMA. Okay.
Let's see. Look at the we just had we had like a 27-minute conversation about Stephen A. Smith. I will guarantee you that none of these other questions will even come close to that. But that's what he brings to the table, folks. And love him or hate him, he's Stephen A. And that's it. But let's talk about the actual fights themselves, because I think most people, at least from people I spoke with on this network and otherwise, felt that Bellator 238 on paper was the better card top to bottom on Saturday than the UFC Raleigh card. Now, Bellator had the lone title fight. Cris Cyborg won the women's featherweight title after beating Julia Budd. Curtis Blaydes did his thing in the main event of UFC Raleigh, finishes Junior Dos Santos. So there's a lot of things to come out of both of these cards. Dan, Tom, I'm going to start with you here. Now that these two events are over, now that they're in the past, who won the weekend in your opinion, the UFC or Bellator?
Well, UFC did a good job at starting off and finishing with a bang. You got the submission artists, grappling-based fighters getting the knockout. I believe that makes up for a lot, guys, as far as recency bias, how a card came. However, I wasn't privy to the argument prior, but what I would imagine people arguing in favor of Bellator is that the potential for storylines were greater. Now, you can really argue here. Maybe you guys might want to take that as far as like the cards, match for match, finish for finish, but I'll hold on to that storylines theme because I believe that kind of came true, whereas the storylines, they may have been surprising. They may have been as potent as they could have be coming from the UFC. But it's frustrating because the heavyweight division is just this giant like lunch line that's like not moving anywhere, and you're stuck in the buffet line looking at all this food. It's getting fucking cold. You don't know what the fuck to do with it. And welterweight, any division touching fucking Conor McGregor, well, we don't have enough time for that, guys. So as far as storylines coming out, Cyborg reasserting herself, perhaps sparking questions that we'll get to hear on this here program, or even, Adam Borks, who got a lot of attention. But then, of course, Darian Caldwell reigniting his storylines and potentials at now 145 pounds.
10 seconds.
I believe Bellator's got it.
Keith, what do you think?
Well, we have 3 questions on Bellator. We got 2 questions on UFC Riley this week. So that right there, I'm going to give it to Bellator. But I'm going to kind of take Craig's time because I'm stealing his argument. I went to Google Trends, and Cris Cyborg is blowing out Curtis Blaydes. It's not even close who's getting all the clicks in the Google Trends things. And right now, Craig is probably rattling, trying to figure out what he's going to say now. Listen, and then even the performances, 60% of Bellator's cards ended in a stoppage, while only 41% of the UFC's cards ended in a stoppage. People are talking about, Cris Cyborg was damaged goods leaving the UFC, and now suddenly they're talking about is she the GOAT again, in women's MMA. So everything went right for them. And I mean, what are they talking about Curtis Blaydes for? Like, that he said he won the title shot? Like, that didn't really get much traction. So it was Bellator, and it was Bellator by a mile.
Wow, with 8 seconds to spare. I was just about to drop the 10-second warning. Craig, Keith stole your answer, probably. I mean, we heard your thoughts on these two cards, fight by fight, on early stoppage, which was a great segment, by the way, heading into Saturday night. Now that both events have gone by, and Keith already revealed the Google trends, who won overall, Bellator or the UFC?
So, Mike, I actually watched this card with friends. I have them. They exist, and I can prove it. And they played a board game while I was that weird guy in the corner that was either doing nefarious things or watching two screens at once. So I had Bellator on one, I had UFC on the other. Mike, I ask you this question. In 3 years' time, are you going to remember Aaron Pico knocking out Daniel Carey? Or are you going to remember Montel Jackson winning a decision over Felipe Colares? Or Justine Kish winning a decision over Lucia Pudzilova? Oh, that 4-fight losing streak for Lucia. I hope she gets back on the horse. No, you're going to remember Bellator. Bellator had way more hype. Dan Tom must have watched Fight Night Picks Kicks, a live show that's featured on Twitter and YouTube. For this point, I have storylines, and then I have top prospects, then I have title implications. And I looked at Bellator and I looked at the UFC. Way more in terms of title implications with Bellator than there was with the UFC. Far more in the way of top prospects. And my one fight that you had to watch that delivered for sure, Kashakian versus Sergio Pettis. Wow, Sergio Pettis, a resurgence. So I think that's what a lot more people are going to be focusing on over Angela Hill and Hannah Cyphers.
John Franklin, why are you picking the UFC outside of the fact that you didn't watch Bellator?
Let's start with a new nickname. How about Dan F-Bomb Tom? I like that one. Man, he's letting them fly tonight.
Potty mouth on
right.
Dan Tom.
Mike, I was unaware there were promotions other than the UFC. Now this other promotion, Bellator, am I saying that right? Is it Bellator? I feel like I'm saying it right. Also, I'm going to take notes. Are there 2 L's in Bellator? There's 2 L's? All right, got it. I'm kidding, of course. Honestly, I was in the rare position this weekend of being on social media, but not watching the fights because I had something else going on live. And people seem more interested in Bellator. I'm sure Craig could give us some Google Analytics on that because this is the show he actually prepares for as opposed to ours. So, listen, let's talk about the card. All right, and let's talk about if you're Scott Coker, what do you want to happen? Right? AJ Agazarm getting a finish? That sounds good. Aaron Pico getting a finish? That sounds good. Juan Archuleta winning? That sounds good. Darren Caldwell and Adam Borch, I think, would be the toss-up fight that you're like, I'd kind of be cool with either scenario. But Caldwell winning by finish sounds good to me. Cyborg winning by finish sounds good to me. So if you were talking to Scott Coker and you said, dude, best case scenario, what do you want to happen tonight? I think a lot of those things that I just said would be the things he would say. So it was a successful night for Bellator, and I don't think the UFC did good enough to steal any of their shine.
You guys can see what's happening on the video, but I do want to throw out a comment in the chat from John Franklin, who said that Craig Allen looks like a Cleveland Browns special teams coach.
That's great. That was great.
So ridiculous.
Hey, remember the time that Bill Belichick was with the Browns? Remember that?
That's right.
Exactly.
And now he's not there, and there's many reasons why. Dan Tom's going to get the 10 points. It was a good round. I almost just want to bring all you guys to the finals because I don't want this show to ever stop because it's that good. Moving on, we mentioned Curtis Blaydes getting a big win on Saturday night. He finishes Judy Dos Santos via strikes. He adds a former champion to his pretty impressive resume. And as you guys all know, if you're watching or listening to the show, the only 2 losses of Curtis Blaydes' career came from Francis Ngannou. But like Dan sort of mentioned, heavyweight is kind of interesting. I like the lunch line analogy, and it's sort of in a standstill right now with Stipe Miocic and Daniel Cormier. We're hearing things about a potential eye injury for Stipe. Who knows where this division goes, especially at the top. So Keith, we're going to start with you with all of these unknowns, and Curtis Blaydes certainly has an argument as to why he deserves a title shot here, but we know we don't say the word deserves when talking about mixed martial arts. Where does Curtis Blaydes go after his big win on Saturday?
Well, he's in a really tough situation because, let's be honest, DC is probably the next person to get a title shot. I mean, we probably deserve that next is the trilogy. Nagano, Rosenstruik, the winner of that is probably second in line, which leaves him third in line, which means he'd be waiting very, very long to get a title shot. So he's going to have to take a fight, and he's probably going to have to take someone below him in the rankings. So there's really four options. You have Lewis versus Latifi winner, Alexander Volkov. Walt Harris is already talking about coming back, so that's a possible fight. But the one I'd actually go with is Anthony Johnson. Like, he's coming back. He already tweeted a date. He's looking for an opponent. He's a big name, former title challenger. He's a guy that, for some reason, everybody's excited about. Take Rumble. But as my out-of-the-box answer is the champ is picking fights right now. I mean, we've seen it with Henry Cejudo. We've seen it with Israel Adesanya. We could see it with Stipe, too. Stipe is already saying he doesn't want to fight DC. DC made him
10
wait.
seconds.
You know, Nagano with Rosenstruik is fighting 2 months from now, which means the turnaround is probably earliest 6 months from now. So if I'm Curtis Blaydes, he should have talked more shit. He should go on Twitter. He should try to make it so Stipe wants to fight him and Stipe picks him. That's what he should be doing. But if you actually want a name, I would go with Anthony Johnson.
Greg?
Yeah, Mike, I mean, really, there's so many fighters out there. We should just pick everybody. I can't do a Boston accent anymore. I'm so upset. You know who he should fight, Mike? Let's be real. We're going to go Marcin Tybura or Junior Dos Santos. You know why? Because they're both on 2-fight losing streaks. And if you lose 2 in a row, you know what you get? You get a title shot. If you're anywhere close to the top, that's what happens. If I'm being honest, Alexander Volkov. It's a fight we haven't seen before. I know he's below him in the rankings. Make it happen. It's a striker versus a wrestler. What could happen? You pretty much see that in every single Curtis Blaydes fight. It can headline in the US. It could headline over in Russia. And they need stars in Russia. You got to build around a guy like Volkov. He's already main evented before. That's the fight to make for me.
Wow, lots of time to spare. And it kind of makes up for Keith's extra 35 seconds that he used. John, what do you think? It's kind of a tough spot for Curtis to be in right now, isn't it?
It is, Mike. When I'm not participating in Between the Links, I'm tweeting about it. We know that. And one of the things that I say all the time when I tweet about Between the Links is we have a rep in the street. If you show up here, you get your balls busted. So do I have a lot of respect for Dan Tom? Of course I do. But he's going to have to take his lumps. Does he only have 6 letters combined in his first and last name? And is that weird? Sure. Does he look like the guy that greets you at a luau in Honolulu? Of course. Was he an extra on 51st Dates? Probably, but we're not here to talk about Dan Tom. We're here to talk about Curtis Blaydes. Curtis Blaydes deserves a shot at the title, Mike. Here's why. Because Stipe Miocic was made to wait, like he said, by Daniel Cormier. The UFC does not want Daniel Cormier to win that belt and ride off into the sunset. They don't want that. And everybody else is either busy or not worthy. Francis Ngannou is fighting Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Daniel Cormier is doing whatever Daniel Cormier is, taking over the Detail Empire. Hopefully, he should run off into the sunset and succeed Kobe in that way. Alistair Overeem doesn't deserve it. JDS doesn't deserve it. Lewis doesn't deserve it. Volkov, Ivanov. I could sit here listing cans all day, but that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to break Dan Tom's balls and say that Curtis Blaydes should get a title shot. There you have it.
Dan, I got to say, I just looked at your IMDb. I didn't see 51st Dates on there. So, you know, we're here talking some MMA. What are your thoughts on Curtis Blaydes' next move after his win on Saturday?
For one, you can actually find me on IMDb. For two, it was an honor to be roasted by Damian Brown's evil twin. But honestly, when it comes to this fight, I'm going to lay out 2 options. One is you guys are matchmaking realistically with actual names, which is probably good for you. I'm actually not going to give you a name, but I'm going to give you a specific scenario for one half of my answer, which is it doesn't matter who they're going to face him with because kind of to the points that you guys are kind of all making, it doesn't matter in the grand scale of things. Someone said earlier the champ is picking and choosing fights. And let's be honest, Blaydes, if it wasn't for Ngannou, would be deserving for the title shot. He's going to be deserving of much more than they give him. But here's what they're going to give him, guys. Whatever they give him, they're going to have it lower on that main card whenever Stipe and DC or Stipe, and I don't think they're going to do Ngannou, but when that heavyweight title is booked, they're going to have Blaydes under that, as that fill-in spot. They're going to pay him some extra money to that. Because if not, he may consider taking Dan Tom's option number 2, which is Curtis Blaydes is one of the only heavyweight fighters under 30 that's like ranked. You know, when you look at like he still has a decade to go before you start hitting like the 36, 35 area, which is like where Verdum's to Couture's, which kind of he slanted the age ratio, but even Brock Lesnar's like that's an average age for a heavyweight title. So I think he should go out to PFL, Bellator, shop around, make some money. He still has time to get back to the UFC.
I am so reluctant to give these points, but I'm going to give them to Keith because even though I hated how he presented the answers, brilliant strategy, just naming off as many people as possible. I have four options for you, but you know, he went first, and that was brilliant use of the time and the look on Craig's face now.
I mean, I'm a part of special teams for a reason, Mike. I think of things analytically. I know what happened in the War of 1812, and you picking that, it's not logical. It doesn't make sense.
You're telling me Rumble doesn't make sense? I think it makes sense.
No, you know what, Mike? I think Volkov and Ngannou, and I think every single person that you listed makes sense.
What is that going to? Volkov just fought Greg Hardy.
What would do higher on Google Trends, Volkov or Rumble Johnson?
All I know, guys, is I would have given Craig Allen like all 10 points just out of my own pocket if he would have finished his answer like his crappy Harold Letterman impression there. That was awesome.
As you know,
Letterman's weighing in.
Mike, my point of contention is you act like that's that's called the shilling, that move. He does it all the time. He's patented it. It's copywritten. I mean, he's done everything you can do with that move.
That's right.
This is nothing new. It's like, you know, when we thought Conor invented shoulder strikes.
Conor has the left hand. I have the shilling.
There you go. It was just brilliant use. And listen, this game isn't about who's right and who's wrong. It's about who presents their argument better and who has a better strategy. Keith had the best strategy. How can I not give him the 10 points with his hot pink shirt? But we moved to the Bellator side of the equation. I know Craig Allen is excited here because he gets to go first on this one. And then you can do whatever you want, Craig, because Cris Cyborg won her 4th major world title on Saturday after she finished Julia Budd in the main event of Bellator 238. And what she has done is pretty amazing. That picture she tweeted and put on social media with the 4 title belts, pretty awesome picture. I'm not going to lie. We always have these conversations, but the gold carries a lot of weight in more ways than one, doesn't it, Craig? I mean, we're going to begin with you on this one. Like we said, did Cris Cyborg's win, her adding that 4th world title to the mantle, did that change your opinion on the women's GOAT talk at all? Or is Amanda Nunes just too far ahead in your opinion?
Yeah, go beat Amanda Nunes, and then I'll let you know. That's really what it hinges on for me. I mean, realistically, you look at Amanda Nunes' career and the run of dominance that she's gone on lately. You look at some of the names that she's racked up. She's beaten every single current and former champ at 135 and 145 pounds. Yeah, maybe one day down the road she can avenge the losses to, you know, a Cat Zingano, but that's not going to happen. I mean, realistically, Amanda Nunes to me is the greatest of all time. You see it in the switching of her styles. You see it with Cris Cyborg a little bit. I mean, she's gotten to be a more technical striker, but she's still quite wild. We saw that in the Julia Budd fight. But you look at Amanda Nunes where it was brawl and sprawl. It was just wild, and now so technical, so crisp with her boxing. You don't really see her use the grappling, but when she needs to, she does. Whereas Cris Cyborg in the fight with Budd, she got taken down, she got in some awkward positions. But you talk about the quality of the wins for Amanda Nunes and the performances that she's been able to put on. Nunes, to me, is the greatest of all time by far. Having those 4 titles is great, and we can certainly make the argument like we will right here. But for me, it's Nunes above all.
John Franklin.
You know, I don't know what's less, the number of good takes Craig's had on this podcast or the number of podcasts Matt did on the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. They're both 0. So, listen, let's talk about the history of Cat Zingano, okay? Let's talk about the history of Cris Cyborg. She's had 2 bad nights, Mike. 2 bad nights. One night was her first fight ever, and the other night was Amanda Nunes, right? Let's talk about Amanda. She's fought in Strikeforce, you know, where Cyborg won a belt. She lost to Alexis Davis. She's fought in Invicta, you know, where Cyborg won a belt. She lost to Sarah D'Alio, whoever that is. Can't even say her name, don't even know who she is. In the UFC, Amanda lost against Cat Zingano, right? So everywhere that Cyborg's won a belt, Amanda's lost a fight. So I get where we're saying that, listen, Amanda Nunes has the best resume there ever has been. But all I know is Cyborg's had 2 bad nights. And that could have been just a bad night she had against Amanda Nunes, and she never got a chance for the rematch.
Keith is still on the floor laughing, apparently. John Franklin, that was a great answer, and you may have just eliminated Keith from this game, and I think a lot of us may appreciate that. But Dan, let's go to you. Cris obviously has longevity. She's been winning titles since Amanda Nunes was a blip on the proverbial MMA radar all of those years ago. Now, obviously, things have changed. Nunes has been on another level, and Cyborg really hasn't slowed down since her loss to Nunes at the end of 2018. So what say you? Has the conversation in regards to the women's greatest of all time, did the narrative change after Saturday night to you?
It slightly shifted, but I don't know if it changed. Now, I don't like this tactic, which is a tactic that is definitely can be useful for programs like these, where you kind of grab one statistic and you kind of fortify your whole argument around it and pretend all the other facts don't exist. I know you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. And that would apply for people that hang on to a head-to-head matchup. I'm usually the opposite. I feel like we put too much in the head-to-head matchups. We don't factor in body of work, storylines, but more importantly, body of work. That being said, I do agree that Amanda Nunes is still the greatest female of all time, largely because of that head-to-head matchup, but also some people that are backing that argument. What they fail to mention is the reason why it doesn't change is because you know who else has a win over Julia Budd? You know who else has a win over Julia Budd, which they might know, but they don't realize it was also at 145. It was Amanda Nunes, and she knocked her out stiff in the first round. So if we're going to split hairs, it did not change the argument. However, it does slightly change as far as I felt like the greatest, featherweight of all time, it still could have been said to Amanda Nunes. And apparently this is still under contention. I'm not trying to change the topic here, guys, but I will say that Cris Cyborg is the greatest female featherweight of all time.
10 seconds.
Just not the women's GOAT.
Keith?
Sorry, I'm on the floor after that Alan. No, listen. So there's a couple options on who the GOAT is. You got Cris Cyborg, Amanda Nunes, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, Megumi Fuji. That's what you wanted, right, Mike? Can we just name people? No, obviously I'm just joking. Amanda Nunes is still the GOAT. I mean, she's a two-weight champion. The resumes are close, but I mean, she's beaten Valentina Shevchenko, Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate. She got 2 wins. I said Shevchenko twice, Jermaine Durandamy twice. To Craig's point, she's beaten every featherweight and bantamweight. If she beats Nico Montagna, she'll have flyweight too. She actually beat every champion in 3 divisions. And then when you look at Cris Cyborg, obviously she has a great resume, but who did she beat that Amanda Nunes hasn't? Marlos Kunin, Gina Carano? I mean, does that make her the GOAT over Amanda Nunes? Of course not. And of course, the biggest tiebreaker is Amanda Nunes knocked her out. Bellator is pushing this narrative, calling Cris Cyborg the GOAT and whatnot. It's an interesting strategy. I understand why they do it. It's what Joe Rogan did with Max Holloway, where he was just calling him the featherweight GOAT, and people are trying to, if Bellator wasn't pushing this narrative, nobody else would. Yeah, I mean, it's Amanda Nunes. I'm sorry, I can't even do this after that joke.
I feel like I'm watching an episode of Sesame Street right now. Like, yes. Keith, what are you doing? I'm just waiting for like a Keith puppet to come flying out of the screen here. There, Jesus Christ, what has happened on this particular show?
There he is.
Just because, you know what? This is
I have a rebuttal.
I'm doing it. We're going forward to the final question.
All right. I'll save my rebuttal then.
Craig, you should be thanking me. You should be thanking me, Craig.
I had a rebuttal. I was going to absolutely destroy. Yeah, I did. I was going to destroy John Franklin.
Oh, there it is. I'm sorry.
John Franklin failed to mention, and it's due to the fact that John Franklin never watches Bellator. John Franklin, if you did watch the main event of Bellator, Bellator does this thing where they try and pump up the fighter. And if it's a Bellator fighter, they'll show their wins, and they're always terrible wins. But when Cris Cyborg pops up there, and the wins are Marlos Kunin twice, Charmaine Tweet, they showed 6 and 4 Charmaine Tweet on that graphic. You think that's a good win, John? You think that's a good one? Somebody's barely over 500. Great win there. I mean, why not throw in Fiona Muxlow or somebody like that, too? Because she won during that run there. Let's bring up Fiona Muxlow. And you said that she never had a bad night, maybe her first one and then the loss to Nunes. What about that no contest against Hiroko Yamanaka? Let's bring that up, too, John. Come on, man. If you're going to bring up the good, bring up the bad.
Go ahead.
There's nothing to say. There's nothing to say to that. Listen, dude, for a while, she was fighting only who was available. I get it. Amanda Nunes came around in a time that was much different than the time the Cyborg came around. I know that when she was, the old Roddy Piper line, when she was well, she was hell, and nobody wanted to fight her. I know that. I know the reason why she didn't fight a lot of these other people is because no one wanted to fight her. That's got a lot to do with it. No one's breaking down Dana White's door when she was in the UFC being like, I'll take Cyborg on, please. So they threw her in there with who they had. So there you go.
Keith is gone. And Craig is livid right now as the video
throwing my
producer
visuals right there, but thanks, Keith.
Not good. Not good. All right, I guess Keith eliminated himself, so that makes my job a lot easier. So let's
He'll be back.
So let's move on to this last question. This show has gone off the rails. We're gonna take titles and history and all of that stuff, and we're gonna throw it out the window. Main events, contender fights, beating former champions, etc. Gone. All right, it has nothing to do with this conversation. Let's talk overall performances as if everyone is at a clean slate and everyone is ranked the same and everyone's just at the same level at this point. In your humble opinion, John Franklin, who had the best overall performance on Saturday night from either Bellator 238 or UFC Raleigh?
Well, Mike, it's time to go back to the props because when I say this name, these guys are going to fall over themselves to beat me about the head. So let's get the headgear back out. Let's make sure that I'm well protected to make this statement. Aaron Pico. I think Aaron Pico had the best performance because I think he had the most on the line. I think that had Aaron Pico, I have respect for good audio, had Aaron Pico lost this weekend, I don't know. I mean, he can say whatever he wants. Tough times don't last, tough people do, and all that. I love where the kid's head's at right now. But I really feel like if he'd have lost this early on the card, it might have put his whole career into a tailspin. We may have never heard from the kid again. Getting a finish, I think he's a prospect like everybody else. I think he's got a long way to go. I think there was a lot on the line with Aaron Pico, and I think he finally delivered.
Dan, what about you?
I started off trying to be clever about this, and that clever path kind of led to what I feel is kind of the obvious answer here. I breezed by Aaron Pico's name because I was thinking about, okay, who has, the most to gain? You got, Cyborg, but she's more at the end of their career, and kind of like the points you guys brought up, who does she really face? Yada, yada, what you could say about Bud, but it's got to be someone young that has a ceiling. So I was thinking about Chiesa, but then I'm like, well, what about performances? His performance wasn't as good as Darian Caldwell's, even though Chiesa was able to jump the rankings and maybe able to jump further. You don't need rankings when you're in a tournament, guys, especially when you're in a tournament that there's a title at the end of it. And not only a title at the end of it, there's $1 million at the end of it. And Darian Caldwell is a young fucking athlete who arguably, without the $1 million, without the title, arguably still has the highest potential for a high ceiling in this sport. It was Darian Caldwell, hands down. I don't think there is another right answer here.
Greg, before you answer, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to bash Keith for dropping out of the program, and then you can give your answer. So go ahead.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm a special teams guy. I get it. You got to pull an audible every now and again. And you got to pull a rabbit out of your hat. So this is what I'm going to do right here. Mike, in terms of the fights this past weekend, there was one guy that was slept on. There was one guy that I brought up earlier, and I'm going to talk about him. It's the lesser of the Pettises. It's the Matt Allen of this network. I mean, he's no longer here, right? Sergio's with Bellator now. Sergio Pettis looked awesome, and I know John Franklin didn't watch it, and they brought up the strength of schedule, and they talked about the Benavidez win. It meant a lot. That's like me beating Keith. Few would have predicted it, but it will happen, and it will happen on this program tonight. Sergio Pettis looked amazing. He was taking on a really tough customer who competed on the first season of Dana White's Contender Series, who had racked up 3 first-round finishes in a row, and all of a sudden, Sergio Pettis comes out and starches him like I just starched Keith, who ruined my visuals.
Keith, what do you think?
Well, I was going to go with Darren Caldwell, but Dan already said that answer, and I had a better argument there. But so I'm going to say why Darren Caldwell is not the answer. He beat Adam Borix. Adam Borix was also losing to Aaron Pico the entire fight. We saw how to beat him. You could just take him down. He has no takedown defense. Hell, Pat Curran, who's like terrible now, took him down. So that's not the right answer. I'm just kind of coming up with answers as I go. So I'll go to Craig. Sergio Pettis had the best performance this weekend. He went against Zikistan Akukistan, or whatever the heck his name is, a guy that got absolutely starched by Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley was looking in the crowd and shit and knocked him out with a no-look punch. That guy, he got beat by Ricardo Ramos. That guy, Sergio Pettis, had the best weekend. He was like a negative 400 favorite. And literally, this was a warm-up fight. The entire Bellator bantamweight division was like, he's facing him, not me. Landry Higo was saying, what, not me? I mean, even Darren Caldwell made a joke about that Sergio's fighting a nobody. That's who had the best performance, being Alfred Kazakhstan. That guy, I mean, give me a break. The best performance of the whole weekend is Alex Perez. Why Alex Perez? I don't know. That's the first name I think of after Dan Stole. No, Alex Perez was below in the rankings. He was below Jordan Espinoza and just smoked right through him. He's moving up in the rankings. You're talking about a guy that also, he only lost to Joseph Benavidez. That division is wide open right now. This is a guy that 1 or 2 wins away from getting a title shot. And what I love is he actually made a great call out. Calling out Askar Askarov, being the guy to give the guy his first loss. That was the best one, and that's the best answer I can do with no notes. Alex Perez.
Mike, can I just say
I would
something?
love for you to add to this.
I don't want to steal Keith's thunder, and there was a lot of thunder there, but I got to give Dan props for one thing. Dan did, so if Keith has the shilling, right, here's the Tom. Okay, the Tom is the non-rebuttal rebuttal. This is what the Tom is. When you say, yeah, I just breezed by Aaron Pico, that's completely decimating my answer without even looking like you're attempting to decimate my answer. Like, yeah, I breezed by Aaron Pico, and he just goes on. Dan, props to you for that. I take everything I said back.
I didn't realize that was the Tom.
Oh, it's the Tom now.
If you ask ex-girlfriends, they might give you a different answer for what the Tom is. But we're not going to go there because then Shilling will be explaining what the Shilling is, and God, we all know we don't want that.
Oh man, this was I think this is the best regulation round in the history of the show. I don't know how we get any better than this. But we have to do Keith versus Dan again. Like, we just have to. I'm sorry. Like, that's the battle. We have to see it again. Both of those guys, those answers were tremendous, and everybody delivered the goods tonight. But I do want to ask Craig and John both to stick around. I want you both to be around. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Hey, Craig, you should have saved your rebuttal, and then you could have pointed out to the listeners that I actually picked Alfred Kazakhstan to beat Sergio Pettis, and then you'd probably be in the final.
I also picked him to win, and I feel like the Aussie Canseco here because I just hit a home run and nobody cares.
You did hit a home run, but it was like the Red Sox against the Yankees. They hit 4 straight home runs, and 2 of them just had to be better. And unfortunately, Mike Lowell and Manny Ramirez win. That's just the way that it is.
Craig, your knowledge of lesser-known brothers is unmatched. Ozzy Canseco, Frank Stallone. I think this is from years of having a less efficient brother. You got to constantly give him those rib shots.
He's the brother in Entourage.
Johnny Drama.
Johnny Drama.
Matty Drama.
Well, Craig, you got me to pop the hardest, but that's probably bad phrasing, so I don't know how much of a compliment.
Dan Tom talking about doing the Tom and then popping hardest. Keep it up.
All right, so Craig and John are gonna stick around and be judges. If you guys are torn, I'll be the final nail in the coffin for one of you guys. But before we head to the rematch everyone's been hoping for, it's your weekly reminder to subscribe to the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network, because not only do you get this fine show, you also get, wait for it, Not Safe for Work with Kyle and Fred, the MMA Takeover with Keith Schilling, Off the Cuff. It's kind of like MMA barbershop talk. You get the breakdown shows for UFC and Bellator. You get the recap shows, early stoppage. There's a Kyle Steele show now, ladies and gentlemen. There's a freaking Kyle Steele show. We have MMA yesterday, sometimes, and much more. So subscribe to the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and, of course, the Loudmouth MMA YouTube channel. John, did I miss any shows here? We have like 7,000 goddamn shows now.
Matt Allen, The Lost Tapes.
Can't wait for that. Can't wait for those to be released soon. Probably MMA yesterday will be out first. But so Keith, 1 to 25.
I'll take 25.
Dan.
When I was 17,
that is the number. 17 is the number. Right on the dot. Dan, with your number victory, you can answer this question first, or you can let Keith answer it first. What would you like to do?
I'll let Keith go first.
So letting Keith go first. Excellent strategy. Keith, I want to talk about Macy Barber. for a minute because she loses to Roxanne Modafferi at UFC 246. She suffers a torn ACL in the fight, which is super unfortunate. I thought she was very tough and gritty. She says that the ACL injury happened, quote, in the first movement of the fight with Roxanne Modafferi. She had a whole bunch of things to say about it, but, she grabbed the microphone after the fight, her father coming out with his statement, Macy releasing her own statement to MMA Fighting that came out today, and a lot has come out of that fight, hasn't it? I mean, just craziness. So my question for the finals here is, and I apologize for not really preparing too much, but how has she handled this all? And more important to the relevance of the question, does the way she handled it, does this increase her interest meter when she does fight again? Like, whether as a fighter everybody wants to see fight or a fighter everyone wants to see get beat up in the octagon? Like, in other words, will more people care about Macy Barber's next fight because of the UFC 246 aftermath or not?
So, yeah, that's a good question. So, conventional wisdom would say it was terrible to drop the mic, try to steal Roxanne Modafferi's moment, having dad make excuses, all this. When we actually saw her get beat up in the first round, I think she heard it when that moment when she fell down and screamed. But, being that she got beat up in the first round, the dad has to take that stand that she got beat. She heard it immediately by throwing a jab or whatever she did in the first 10 seconds. But think about this. This is a 21-year-old girl. And for some reason, when we have these young fighters, if it's a pretty girl who's confident, when she checked the boxes and everything, they get a lot of hate. It's like why Paige Van Zandt gets a lot of hate. It's why, what's the girl, the Brazilian girl with the accent? What the hell's her name? Mackenzie Dern. Why Mackenzie Dern gets a lot of hate. She's in the same thing. So, if anything, I think she's become more popular. Everyone's talking about her now after she's got her loss. Everyone's giving, they want us to, she has this big, long rehab. She's going to be out of the news she's going to be out of fighting for 9 months, but she's not going to be out of the news for 9 months. So it's actually a smart move. Play the villain. Have your dad be more vocal. He could be like the Paul Heyman to Brock Lesnar. Like, have him be out front saying ridiculous things. What's that basketball? I don't remember the name. The basketball dad that was always talking up his sons and saying stupid shit.
Ball.
Lorenzo Ball. Let the dad be that. Why not? You're 21. You've already as soon as she was going to fall, people were going to jump at it. As soon as she said, I want to be the youngest champion ever, she has the countdown on her phone. People are not backing you. For some reason, when someone comes in the UFC and they get a lot of hype, people hate them. Sage Northcutt is the nicest dude on the freaking planet. If he was on the show right now, he'd be calling you, Mr. Heck and Mr. Franklin and Mr. Special Teams Coach and stuff. But people still hate that guy. Right? People were like, when he got up in weight and got his face exploded in one championship, and people were happy to see it. So people would be happy to see her lose. So go full Colby Covington, turn it to the mean chick. Turn it to take over where Ronda Rousey left off. That's what she should do.
All right, Dan, you heard what Keith had to say. Do you think more people are interested in Macy Barber now, or heading into the Roxanne Modafferi fight with the way she handled the loss?
Well, if you frame it that way, I think more people are interested in it now. But I'll answer it more specifically to the words you used at the beginning, Mike, which was, how did she handle the loss, right? And I'm going to walk a line that's fine between how she handled it to the injury herself, because you can't say the injury is a part of her handling, right? That's just a circumstance that she has to handle. However, I will argue here that the injury is actually good. And even though it's tough, because like I said with the previous answer, I'm a hardline martial artist, so I kind of have that mindset where I'm more, even Chael Sonnens of the world, who you wouldn't stereotype as a martial artist, but he kind of goes by this, and we'll cite guys like Yushin Okami, where when they're injured, when a lot of these quote unquote real fighters, as they put it, are injured, they don't make an excuse in victory or defeat. So it's really tough for me to get away from that and say that I'd say that she handled it quote unquote right. However, to kind of build on to Keith's point, which is, I can't deny when Keith says that, hey, go out there, play the heel, it's going to make you more popular, and it is. But the thing is, other fighters done it, like Josh Koscheck, and you might have got some miles, and you may have your part in MMA history, but it's not a lot, and you might only get to a title. And the reason why I say getting to a title and comparing Josh Koscheck is because if Macy Barber won, and if Macy Barber didn't get her knee injured, she would be rushed to a title shot like Horiguchi. Now, that's not the knee injury is how it's not how she handles it. I got you. But if you look at the statement, rounding this whole thing back around, the statement to her loss, part of it, again, I disagree with a lot of it, but part of it, she did call for a rematch with Modafferi. I think that's perfect. I think it drums up controversy, not for the reasons that Keith said, just to be the heel in Colby Covington, but it brings up legitimate controversy because she's not just doing it to be controversial. Like Macy Barber, like her or not, she really fucking believes in herself. Sorry, F word Dan here. She really effing believes in herself, I want to be the youngest champion. So she already has that controversy. And now that she has the knee injury and then she capitalized by calling for a rematch, it's going to give her time to kind of get that build and push that Mike alluded to, that Keith made an argument for. But I'm going to say she handled it right, outweighs it because she asked for the rematch. That doesn't mean I like the rest of how she handled it, but I will say she handled it right and she will come off better for it because the injury and the controversy will allow her time to build another chapter instead of going right to Shevchenko like she could have done.
All right.
Well, I got to go add to that because I agree with a lot of things he said, but I don't know if tearing your ACL is a good thing. I mean, ask Dominic Cruz if that's a good thing. Ask TJ Grant if that's a big thing. Ask Terrell Davis if tearing your ACL is a good thing. I would never call a major injury a good thing. Now, you said, don't go the villain route because you can end up like Josh Koscheck. I mean, a guy who coached tough, got a title shot. I mean, if that's the peak of her career, that's a pretty damn good career. You mentioned that she might get rushed and face and happen to her what happened to Kyoji Horiguchi. You mean become one championship? Talking about one championship, Rising champion and Bellator champion? Is like that's what happened to her? Become a two organization champion? Like, if you're going to use Horiguchi as an example, like, don't pick a guy who failed as your example. Let me back up. Use someone who failed, not someone who succeeded, who's got, at one time was champion of two major organizations. And why I think I agree with him that calling a rematch is smart, but calling a rematch because when she faces Roxanne Modafferi, it's going to be a year from now. Roxanne Modafferi will be another year older. She's going to take other fights. She's going to get more wear and tear on her body of a girl that's already had tons of miles on it. That's why it makes a lot of sense.
Am I allowed to rebuttal still?
Absolutely.
A great point on the Horiguchi one, but the problem is that Horiguchi didn't come into the UFC, like I stated in my answer, wanting to be the youngest UFC champion. And when Horiguchi did have a decision as far as, do I want to become UFC champion or one double champ or whatever that led to, he chose when there was no championship belts there, and good for him, he earned it. But the fact is, he went to a lesser organization. He chose money over accolades. Macy Barber does not sound like she wants money. Sounds like she wants record books. And I feel like when you put your hope that far at that high, the higher you come, the higher you fall. So that's how I meant that. And then more specifically, even though they're roughly the same weight, Demetrius Johnson and Valentina Shevchenko, I feel like, you look at Priscilla Cachoeira versus Shevchenko compared to DJ versus really anybody, dominant, ready, not ready. I feel like that damaged the elbows and that Styles matchup. We like to give crap that, the women aren't going to finish. Bet the over. But we've seen what an unprepared fighter looks like against Shevchenko. So maybe it was a bad thing in Horiguchi, but when we're talking about the relevant division, the relevant fighter, the relevant trajectory, and her stated goals at hand, I will stand by that part of the answer.
Well, right. I'm going to go back to the Horiguchi because I just think
last one for both of you.
I just think you just picked the name and just threw it up against the wall because to compare them, like Horiguchi when he got the title shot was almost 25 years old, not 21 years old. He had twice the amount of fights that Macy Barber has. He was ready. He was highly ranked when he faced him. The problem is he went against a guy that possibly is the greatest fighter of all time, at least in a talent sense he is, in Demetrius Johnson. That's why he lost, not because he was young. If he fought Demetrius Johnson, now he'd lose. Demetrius Johnson's better than him. That's what happens. It had nothing to do with his age. If I was going to do like someone who got rushed, I'd probably go with like a David Terrell. Like that's who I would have went with. And that's a really good example. I know, because that's what I think. Even on the podcast you were on, goddammit, that we talked about David Terrell. Yeah. So this is, man, it's cool, man. This is what I do. So that being said, a great point. And my last thing is, I will say, Horiguchi, his post-fight speech before he fought Demetrius Johnson was specifically that he was not ready and didn't want it. I'll leave that there. Still different. Right. They're different examples.
So we had a battle between the links between Keith and Dan, and then we had a battle in the chat between the two judges, Craig and John, both battling it out on who wants to go first. And you may have noticed if you're watching on YouTube right now that I went into my pocket and I threw something up in the air and I turned around. I literally took a coin out of my pocket and threw it up in the air to decide who was going to go first. John was heads. Craig was tails. Heads came up. So John, you get to go first. Craig is so pissed. I'm telling you, I can show you the camera right now. I didn't touch the damn dime. It's sitting on the floor. Heads up right behind me. John, go ahead.
And with that, we welcome you to Early Stoppage, a show where the judging of the day is usually given just enough time, but sometimes not enough. I'm John Franklin. I'll be joined shortly, as always, by Craig Allen of Fight Night Picks in Between the Links. On this episode of Early Stoppage, we discuss who won this week's Between the Links. Craig, Dan Tom was solid throughout. Keith had video issues. He ran it like a maniac, and in several segments mailed it in. Craig, what do you think?
Listen, John, I love this segment of the show. It's always my favorite. Keith kind of showed up this week like almond milk that you leave out on the counter for 2 weeks. You can have a sip of it. It's going to be flat. It might be spoiled, but sometimes it just does the job, and that's kind of what Keith did here today. Today's show really reminded me of when you go to a Canadian strip club, and you go there with a bunch of buddies, and then one of your buddies goes up on stage, and he gets beat with a belt. It's exciting. It's exhilarating. All of the group has a good time until the end, and then it's just a disappointment. And that's what we saw here today, John. Back to you.
Well, Mike, there you have it. We have Dan Tom winning this round, and that does it for us on Early Stoppage. Craig, say something witty.
I got nothing. I'm disappointed.
Well, the judges have spoken. Keith's face says it all. Dan Tom, congratulations, my friend. Another victory, another solid finals. And I still have tears in my eyes. This might be the greatest episode of the show of all time. We've had many great episodes. Keith is livid, but we're still going to give him a chance to say his 2 cents. But with the victory, you don't get any money or anything. We get 30 seconds to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. Good, bad, and different in the sport of mixed martial arts.
That means a lot. I knew I wasn't going to, outdo like an Aaron Bronstetter with a Nick Diaz impression or anything like that. But I just want to say, since I won, this definitely feels like Yoel Romero versus Robert Whittaker too. Because I'll be honest, I feel like Keith was like giving it to me at the end there. But it's like, I did enough in the early rounds to get the judges' scorecard. So I'm like the guy getting my hand raised while the crowd boos, even though there's actually a good argument for me to win if you look at the quiet work. So I'll take the controversial Yoel Romero Robert Whittaker fight. A classic for a classic, right, guys?
Oh, I love it.
Keith, you're as Craig alluded to earlier, your face is as pink as your shirt right now. What would you like to say?
Well, I mean, this is what happens when we get in replacement judges who don't know how it's scored. It's not scored overall show. It's scored the finals round. And when your opponent admits that I beat in the finals. But listen, I get it, man. This is the worst judge. And since that one judge gave Johnny Lopez a scorecard at CS 60. Listen, honestly, I got to get out of here. There's a couple things I got to do. The first thing I do, I got to unsubscribe from MMA On Point now that they've lowered their standards. So I got to go.
Wow.
Props to you for picking yourself up off the floor. Good on you.
Nice shirt, though, bud.
All right. I mean, what else needs to be said, ladies and gentlemen? I think that's going to do it for us. Congratulations to Dan Tom for picking up the victory. So make sure you subscribe to the network because you don't know what's going to happen on this damn show. We don't know who's going to come and who's not. Maybe Davidson won't show up next week and Dan Tom's going to sub in for Davidson Baker. We could do this all over again. I mean, this would be the best thing ever. But thank you guys for listening. Make sure, like I said, subscribe to the network, subscribe to the YouTube channel. For Keith, John, Dan, and Craig, I am Mike Heck. We'll see you back once again between the links next week. We'll be talking UFC 247 and more. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week.